What's up, guys? Brady Figuel here, coming at you with a review of the new Starset album Silos, out today, Friday, September 12th. This was like a really easy album to prepare for because 8 of the songs were singles. It's kind of similar to what Falling in Reverse did last year, how this album is maybe less of a new album and more of just like a singles collection from the last year and a half or so now. But as far as Starset goes, they're definitely a band where with all 4 of their albums now, honestly, there's been like a handful of songs that I thought were solid, that I've enjoyed somewhat, but there has yet to be like a full release by the band that I've really been able to latch onto. One thing that I think they have always done well is kind of differentiating themselves from the rest of mainstream hard rock and similar bands in their scene. Just with their heavy emphasis on cinematics, often in the forms of electronic and studio effects. My main issue with their music is that, to me, it has always felt like those aspects, the cinematics, the studio effects, the overall drama of their music, has kind of always been the nucleus, I forgot how to pronounce that, and the music kind of ends up being built around that, whereas to me, the other way around would be the better approach. That's just my opinion, obviously. This band has obviously grown a pretty large fan base, and I can see why, because all those elements that I just mentioned that describe their music, they're obviously a big draw, and it all plays into Starset being a rather unique band that has emerged within the last 10, 12 years now. Which just, that alone is something I respect. And going into this record, I was actually pretty intrigued, maybe more so than any Starset album prior, because judging by at least the first few singles, the band really did sound like they were attempting to widen their musical scope and incorporate a lot of new ideas. Like, I was actually pretty hyped for this record, just because of the first 2 tracks that were released as singles last year. You first had Brave New World, which tossed in some pretty prominent straight-up metalcore elements, most notably in that screamed second verse that sounded great. And also the track Degenerate, which is the, I guess, sort of the full-length opening track on this record. It has this awesome, like, droning main riff that I think is especially moody. The verses have this, like, ominous lurk to them that, despite how melodic they are, they do a pretty good job at building tension. The chorus is super catchy. The bridge is super climactic, and it just ascends and crashes into this vicious scream at the end. And even like those bellowing, like, throaty spoken word parts, I actually thought were somewhat interesting and added to the song, just because, again, there's something a bit different. So just because of those 2 singles alone, I was pretty intrigued to see where this album went. But I gotta say, as they started releasing more and more singles leading up to this album, I started to get more and more turned off with each one. Because while this album definitely does represent a widening of musical influence in Starset's music, I find that a lot of the experimentation on here and a lot of these added influences brought into Starset's sound is bound and bogged down and almost restrained in these really rigid song structures. The overwhelming majority of the full-length tracks on here fall into the exact same structure, and in the full album context especially, that's just it's especially maddening. Like, you listen to all of these tracks and it's the same shit. Intro, I would say main riff, but there isn't really much riffing on here. I'll get to that later. Main riff, I will say, into a more melodic verse. Maybe it gets heavy at parts. You get your straightforward, familiar sounding chorus with the end of the chorus using the title of the song to lead into this big drop. Almost every song on here has that. Degenerate, the title track Silos, Brave New World, Dystopia has a similar vibe here, although it's said in the middle of the drop, if you will. Toksik, another one. Dark Things structurally does that too, although that song is a bit more melodic overall. Like, you just listen to these songs. Toksik, Degenerate, it's a brave new fucking world. Dark Things, like, it's the same fucking shit on here. And when they're so restrained by this rigid structure, it doesn't allow this added influence to really make that impact, because the songs are just so predictable as a result. I think it would have really benefited the band here to have some unconventional song structures or just something to break up this monotony, because the result is all of these added influences the band has never really done much before. It doesn't feel like anything fresh or unpredictable, just because of how samey all of these songs sound and how similarly structured they are. Like, part of me thinks the band might have actually been better off not bothering with releasing these songs as an album and just letting them do their thing as singles. Because listening to all of these tracks sequentially in this album format really does bring out the stagnancy and the similar ideas that just feel like they're beating you to death with every song that comes up. And not only that, but there are some ideas and some experimentation on here that just flat out doesn't work, and at times is just straight up cringy, like on Toksik. There is so much fucking cringe in this song. I mean, the verses, how they have what I will call Siri vocals spliced in, like Siri as in the iPhone lady. The chorus has like those robotic synthy vocals like echoing Dustin's words. There's that god-awful, oh my god, that god-awful rap section in the bridge where he says lions and tigers and bears, and you get the backing vocals going, oh my, oh my. I don't even have the words. I don't know who thought that was a good idea, but this is like some rudimentary, like, kindergarten level songwriting. The chorus is boring as hell. Like, it's one of those choruses. I already singled out how a lot of the choruses do sound a little bit familiar or recycled in a way, but this is one of the most, like, blatantly boring choruses on the whole record. Like, I feel like this chorus could have been on any of Starset's first 4 records. The song Sway, especially in the verses, like, this could literally be an Imagine Dragons song. Like, the verses in particular, but the whole song. The whoa-whoa vocals come in on the track Dystopia, also the Head Over Heels cover on here, which I find equally as insufferable almost as Toksik. Those are the only songs I would say that I actively dislike. There's a big chunk of songs on here that I am just kind of indifferent toward. Like, Shattered Dreams is fine, I guess. Again, it's a bit more pop influenced overall. It's very synthetic. The synthetic percussion in particular in that second verse I think is a little cheap. And overall, that's just a song that I think tries really hard to sound emotional, but it never quite gets there for me. Same with Dark Things, another track that is very, very electronic and synthetic influenced. It is a very saturated song with some nice melodies, but again, this track just, it feels a bit soulless to me. And the title track's fine, I guess. My issue with that song is that I think the chorus kind of disjoints the mood a little bit, especially coming right out of that more aggressive part. But I do actually like the synths that take up the intro of the song and how they kind of flourish through the verses. I think that sounds pretty nice. But the only tracks I really enjoy on here is at least most of Brave New World. That chorus definitely has waned in appeal a little bit to me just because, again, it is really, really familiar sounding. I still pretty much like all of Degenerate, and also the last formal track on here, At Astra, I actually really enjoy. That song, I think, is probably the most musically creative song on this album, and maybe even of Starset's career. I mean, the rhythm section in that second verse is really cool. The bass and the drums just bring in like this almost tribal type beat that I find especially addicting. There's a lot of really nice, pleasant melodies in this track. And most notably, Dustin's vocals on the clean vocal side of things. Like, he just absolutely belts on this song. Those high notes in particular just hit so hard. This is probably my favorite song on the album, quite frankly. The only gripe with it is that I think the studio effects near the end are a little bit extra and don't really need to be there. Aside from these similar sounding formulas, which definitely weighs the album down, this album's biggest flaw to me is just all of these fucking interludes. Like, why do they need this many interludes on this album? They do absolutely nothing. They use a lot of the same ideas, the kind of low register choir vocals and the dramatics, the cinematics, I guess, but they don't convey any type of prominent emotion. They don't kind of represent, they don't really complement individual songs in any way, and as a result, they all sound the same. They don't have any specific identity to them. They sound like the band was trying a bit too hard to amplify these cinematics and this drama. The only part on literally any of the interludes on here that I thought was interesting was those female vocals that come in at the end of At His Altar. Aside from that, you could have thrown all of them in the fucking garbage, and this album would have been, it would have made no difference with this record. Because rather than split up the songs, which are already pretty samey like I've mentioned, it just brings in more of these samey feelings that just get more and more redundant each time you listen to one of these interludes. One thing that I think the band did experiment with that worked well is the harsh vocals, the growls. A lot of them take on more of like a robotic, like almost growling, deep. It's hard to describe exactly how they sound, but they're definitely something really unique, and it actually really works for the band in this case. Degenerate, Silos, the title track, Brave New World, all great instances of that where I think those harsh vocals really do add to the song. And I do like that the band pushed themselves and incorporated some different new influences into their sound. Again, that's something I always respect, but a lot of the flaws of their past material is still here as well to me, most notably like the guitars. These guitars have absolutely zero presence on these songs. Like, besides that opening main riff in Degenerate, like, they don't do anything on here. The studio effects and then the cinematics, like I've been saying, just dominate. And, like, I feel like if I was playing guitar in this band live, I would just be so bored because of actually what I'm physically playing. So yeah, overall, it was good to hear them trying out some new things, but I think they need to experiment a bit more with their structures, with their actual songwriting ideas, as opposed to just their influences, because I do think there's a difference there. And as a result of all these things, this album just doesn't do it for me. So for that reason, I'm going to give it a score of 9 out of 30. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. If you've listened to this album, which I assume you have because most of this album has been out for months now, please comment below what your thoughts are, as well as hit the subscribe button for more rock and related content and album reviews. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, I'll see you guys later. Peace.